Neepawa Area Immigrant Settlement Services, an organization that works with permanent residents and temporary foreign workers in the region, has partnered with the National Indigenous Residential School Museum of Canada to help newcomers become more aware of and understand Indigenous culture and history. Gladys Regandang, Settlement Workers in Schools Coordinator, says that the project has been in the works for a couple of years now. Newcomers to the area often see observances such as land recognitions at many events, but don't know the background or context for it. It's hard to impress the importance of it on newcomers, says Regandang. While Settlement Services has been conscientious about giving newcomers information, it doesn't compare to the kind of direct and open conversation these sessions offer, which can include connecting the experience of Indigenous peoples to the experiences of newcomers to Canada. 2 sessions were held, one for adults and one for students, each with a slightly different focus. Indigenous history and the history of residential schools is a part of Canada that doesn't often get talked about, especially outside of the country. Regandang says that it was important for them to help people understand that it's more than Orange Shirt Day and powwows. The sessions, headed by the museum's executive director Lorraine Daniels, connected first-hand accounts of that history with the realities of contemporary life in Canada for Indigenous people, settlers, and newcomers. According to Regandang, while they don't have another session scheduled right now, she hopes that the relationship between the 2 organizations will continue to grow and help cultural understanding for all Canadians.
Good morning. My name is Ruth Roulette, and I'm from Long Plain. I want to start with our prayer before we start our meeting. In our language, in our tradition, we usually start with a prayer for everything that we do, whether it's a meeting or whether it's a meal, or so that's how we do it. So I want to say it in my language. So I know you won't be able to understand it, but I'll say it, and it's a welcoming prayer. So. Awi shimani to mi bachi di bumagi bishiango, kama mubiang, uhuawi ta shimangi tonic, kau on the shot where the was a shimani to. One chicken of Muba, Kinomaga, the Matapiat. Quick chigagi get along no home. Chikimak to young shimani to. One of Canary Wutamin, quick catching a gagi what no one shimani to. Measure send me when bishamani to. Uga binuja kumaga na matapiot kishamani to. Kitimagi. Chinin me wood kishamani to. Kinanish can I go? Can I with the candle? It's chinin me kishamani to. Can I go? You wash it to the monkey. Pugachimage, Ninanish Kandan, Aninjish Animiana Sne, Snendanamia Wet and Cheese. There's a book of cinema going to be shamanic. Me bunch. Thank you.
We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 2 territory and that the land on which we gather is a traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Assiniboine, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. I would like to call on Ms. Ruth Roulette, Linda Daniels, and Lorraine Daniels to be here in the front. And I would also like to call on Ms. Trisha Savadsky to present our offering. Yes, please stand.
I wanted to offer tobacco and thanks for your willingness to share your history and culture with us today.
Oh, cute. Oh, me good. Me good.
And Linda. Sorry.
Good. English. Thank you.
Thanks.
Alright, so thank you so
Thank you.
much.
for accommodating us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alright, so just a standard operating procedure. Are you guys okay if someone would hop in this room to take pictures mid-session? It's just for us to promote it to our social media page. Are you okay with that? Yes? Yes or yes? Perfect. Alright, yeah. So yeah, if someone will pop in later, it's either me or someone from the office who will take photos. So just ignore that person, okay? Also, we have refreshments available. Please help yourselves. And then I would like to request everybody to put their phones on silent. And then if you have a call that you really need to answer, you can just step out of the room, okay? So yeah. In light of the upcoming holiday, Truth and Reconciliation, today, we are gathered for a sole purpose of learning about the Indigenous people and their culture. I consider myself as a new immigrant to Canada, knowing that I just landed here last 2022. It was December last year when I met these amazing people through a conference. And I have learned that these people was being silenced for too long, that they were treated as invisible, and that their voice do not matter. Their existence has just been acknowledged just lately, but some are still turning a blind eye to them. So I thank you, dear attendees, for coming today, for joining us as we empower these people, because what do they want is they just want to be heard, seen, and understood. So without further ado, please help me welcome Miss Ruth Roulette.
Thank you very much. I want to thank each and every one of you, and welcome to our country, everybody. Yes, we have a beautiful country, and I know you're going to fit in well with us. I just wanted to tell you a little bit. I'll tell you my story first. We were years ago. I was in some kind of a treatment center. I don't know if you'd call it a treatment center, but there was a lady there that we loved so much. Her name was Miss Tagawalo. Remember Miss Tagawalo? She was from the Philippines. And she was just a lovely, lovely lady, and she looked after us. Tagawalo, that was her name. Yeah, oh, she was beautiful. And she looked after us. She looked after us girls when we that were all there. Diane would remember her, Miss Tagawalo, yeah. So we were there, and she looked after us. Boy, she was a wonderful, wonderful lady. And I have a lot of love for the Philippines people, by the way, because I have a lot of friends that are Philippines through Facebook. So you all know what Facebook is. Yeah. So I have a lot of friends there that are from the Philippines. So yeah. Yeah, I come to love your people. Like I think you've experienced a lot of the things that we experience as Indigenous people. I grew up in a residential school in a reserve called Sandy Bay First Nation. You might have heard about it. There was a residential school there. It was a Catholic residential run by the Catholic people, and we were not treated good there. Although we're still, I still believe I'm a Catholic, and although I don't go to church, I still pray in the religion. So I have a lot of respect for our religion, the different religions that we practice. But anyway, I went to residential school when I was about 6 years old, and I was there for a few years. And while we were there, we were not treated good. We were abused every which way you can think of, sexually, physically, mentally. While we were there, our parents were not allowed to come and see us, maybe just once a year. And we got to go home at Christmas time, by the way. And that was the only time we were allowed to go home. And that was the only time we got to see our parents. The rest of the time we never seen them. So we never seen our younger brothers and sisters till we got home. And it was not a nice place to be. It was torture. I would say we were tortured in there by the nuns and by the priests, by the Catholic priest and by the Catholic nuns. In the pictures that I have pictures of myself while I was there. You will see in my pictures, the rest of the students that I had pictures with, and I think my sister was in there, and so was Lorraine was in that picture, and some of my siblings. In the picture that you see me, I'm chubby. I'm really chubby in the pictures, and the rest of the kids that are sitting in the picture are all very skinny because we weren't allowed to eat the food that the priests and the nuns ate. We were not treated right. I witnessed many of my siblings being forced to eat and being tortured if they didn't eat their food. I witnessed that. I witnessed my sister being beaten because she defended one of my relatives being beaten on a board. There was a big table, and the girl was there. My relative was there, and my sister went to help her. And while she was helping my relative, my sister was beaten and beaten and beaten, and she was made to pray in front of a statue for hours on her feet. And I wanted to go to her to help her, but I couldn't, because if I did, I would have been beaten too. So I stayed away from her, and everybody was so quiet. But going back to the food, like I said, in the pictures that you see me, I'm chubby. The rest are not. The rest are very skinny, skinny, skinny. Because I learned how to steal food. In the middle of the night, I would go down to they call it the refectory, where they kept all the food. So in the middle of the night, I would sneak down to the refectory, and I would eat and eat and eat. Nobody knew. Nobody knew what I was doing, because I was so sneaky. Well, I guess sneaky then would be the word, right? Because I would sneak down there, and then I would eat and eat and eat. So in those pictures that you see me, I'm chubby. I'm really chubby. Everybody else is skinny, eh? Because they weren't allowed to eat. But I figured out how to eat. I figured how to eat. And nobody ever found out what I was doing. They did. If ever found out, boy, I wouldn't be standing here, I don't think. But yeah, it was not a good experience. I remember one day I was looking out outside. We used to always look outside, eh? Don't mind me if I get emotional. But I was looking outside, and I seen a man walking, and he had a uniform on, an army uniform. And he was walking on the road, walking all over. And then I kept looking at him and kept looking at him. Who is this man? And the man turned around and looked at me, because we had little windows that we can look out, right? And here it was my father. My father was a veteran of World War II, right? And so he had come to visit us, and he had his whole uniform on. And the nuns and the priests were very scared of men in uniform. And so we were allowed to visit my father that day, only because he was in uniform. And we were allowed to go and see him, to visit him for a couple of hours. But I remember that day when I was looking at him, I said, I wish I knew that man. Here he was my father. So that was one of the stories. It was really hard to let him go after he come to visit us, because like I said, I wouldn't be able to see him for a long time again. Yeah, we were not treated right there at the church. At the residential school in Sandy Bay. For a long time, I hated the people of Sandy Bay, because I thought they represented the school, the residential school. That's what I thought. And I hated the people from up there. And whenever I see them, I would just shudder. You're from that reserve, you're from that residential school where I was tortured. And ended up over the years, I met a man who became my husband, who is now my husband, and he was from Sandy Bay. Go figure. He's the most gentlest man on earth. I've been married 50 years now. And but he was from Sandy Bay. Somehow, Creator, God, Jesus, put us together so I could forgive, so I could have that forgiveness in my heart. And I came to love the people of Sandy Bay after that, because I knew that was not them. It was the church. It was those people. It was the nuns, and it was the priest. It was them. And while my husband told me his story, by the way, and he was badly sexually abused there as well in the residential school by the priests and by the brothers that looked after us, and he was severely sexually abused. But somehow, God, Jesus, Creator, put us together so that we could grow up together and raise our children in a good way, and to forgive everything that happened to us. And it took us a long time. It took us years and years to forgive the people and to forgive the churches. And today I can say we're healthy because we're able to forgive, and we were able to move on and raise our children in a good way. And yeah, so that's my story. While growing up there, it was a lot of healing that we had to do in our own family. And now today I sit as I ran for council for many years on my reserve. I was on council for 6 years, and during that time I came to have a lot of respect for the people that I worked with, as well as for my community. I never wanted to come back to my community. I went to university in Regina and also in Saskatoon, and I never wanted to come home. And I told my husband, I'm not going to go back to Long Plain again, ever. But we ended up there, and I got in, like I said, I got in as council, and I learned a lot of things. I came to love my people again, and came to love the reserve again, that I grew up in. And we're still learning. There's a lot of learning to do in our community. I now sit as an elder for the council, and I'm supposed to advise them when they go off the wrong way, and no, this is how you do it. Listen. So that's what I do. I sit as an elder on the council for Long Plain. So that's what I do. In terms of the I'll leave that alone and just go into the museum now. A number of years ago, many years ago, my brother told me this story. He's the one that was instrumental in getting the residential school museum going. A number of years ago, he was telling me that the building still stands, right? The building still stands. This building still stands. And he was a chief at that time, and he was walking around the residential school. It was in the summertime, and he was walking around, and as a chief, he said, I want this place torn down. I don't want any memories or bad memories here. That's what he said. But then he said, as he walked and more as he's walking around, he says, no, he said, I want this place to stand. I want it to continue, because I want it to be a place of healing, which is what it's called. It's a place of healing. I want people to know about this place, how we were treated, and how it's become now a place of healing, so people can come all over the world to see it. And people do come from all over the world to see it, right? And they do. And Lorraine here has done a wonderful job in making sure that everything is categorized and also documented on what it represents today. Because today this was a place of torture for many of our people. My mother was here too, and she witnessed a lot of abuse and torture as well. So was her mother, and that's where they grew up. And it was not a nice place. Today it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place, and I encourage all of you to come and visit it if you get a chance to, because Lorraine has done a superb job in fixing it all up. So, yeah, so that's all I have to say. So I'm sorry if I made some of you emotional, because I get emotional to talk about it too. So thank you very much for letting us come, and welcome to Canada, by the way. Yeah, I hope you'll be very, very happy here. Canada's a beautiful place to be. Yeah. Yeah, so you'll be happy here. Yeah, and anytime you want to come to the museum, let us know, and I'll be there with her. Okay, thank you very much. And my sister Linda's going to be telling the story next.
I have allergies in the fall, so I'm not crying. And coughing because of my allergies. I'm again against this.
Okay. So you don't fall? I'll hold you if you fall.
My name is Blue Rock in my language, and I'm from the Bear Clan. We're all from animal clans, but we're from the Bear Clan. I was 6 years old. 6 years old. She's 2 years older than me. 6 years old also when I first went into residential school. I used to be wondering where all my siblings went, the older siblings. And then the day that we went, they told me that I was going to be with my siblings, and I was excited. And it took us, this is the first time I was in a car. I was never in a car before. And I was in a car with my siblings. There was Ernie, David, Marlene, and Ruby. And Marlene, my sister, oldest sister, carried me for how many? Was it about an hour? Is that big?
Yeah.
And I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I seen this big building up, like we've never seen this building before. And we didn't even go to town. So the big residential school like that. And when we got there, I seen these women. They were dressed in black, all black. Just their faces were showing, and they were black and white. And I said to her, Ande ay. And she said, Bizan, said, be quiet. She said, don't talk our language. Don't talk our language. And that's the only language I knew was my language. I didn't know English. And she said to me, follow me wherever you go, whatever I do, follow me, but be quiet. But at one time I did say something in our language, and I got slapped across the face not to ever talk my language again. So I kept silence for many, many years. I was the youngest one till Christmas time, till another girl came. I was, we had to go to school way up in the classroom. It was way up in the attic. And it was so hard for me to climb all those stairs all the time. I'd fall asleep up there, and there was no washrooms up there, and I'd pee myself. And then so because of that, they didn't let me go to school until December, until I got older. So I stayed in the playground, and then I'd play in the dormitory and follow the nuns wherever. Till Christmas. And following year, a couple of years later, my cousin came to residential school. Oh, we had long hair. I had long curly hair. And we got there, they cut our hair all like, like Dora. So all like, do that. everybody looked like that. And they put they took us to the washroom, and they put white stuff in here, in our hair, after they cut our hair, and it's white, it was DDT in our hair. And I just cried because my eyes were sore, and then they took when they were taking the DDT off, you know, my eyes were so sore, and I was crying and crying. And then they put me in the bathtub, and she scrubbed me as hard as I could. You know, like I think they did that to a lot of kids. They're trying to make us white, and yet, you know, I'm brown. There's no way they can make me white. And that it's so painful when they used to do that to us, the nuns. And it was so. And I said to myself, you know, is this the way we have to live the rest of our lives? So I had to kind of learn to accept it. But other kids, sometimes we talk our language, we were very careful not to say things. Anyway, about my cousin coming, I've seen my cousin being tortured. She was a beautiful little girl when she came, and when I seen her, she was black and blue. He did not recognize her. She looked like so skinny. Her hair was cut. Her face was so ugly. And they told us we don't eat, we listen our language, and this would happen to us. So the fear was always putting us all the time if we didn't eat. And then one time they came and got me, and I sat beside her, and she was crying, and the food that they gave us was very foreign. It was always pork and fat, and it was very lumpy porridge, and it was burnt. The food was burnt because there were so much people, I guess kids, that they had to cook for. There was not very good food, so a lot of us were very skinny, except her. And when she started eating, and I told her to eat because they were hitting us in the head to eat. And I said, we smell. I said to her in my language, we smell. And we ate, and then she started throwing up. And I threw up too. And then we see her vomit. We had no choice. There were a lot of kids, that happened to a lot of kids, not only us. So we were tortured. A lot of kids were very skinny and malnourished. We didn't have enough food. How can we think? And we had to go to school too. And we prayed about 10 times a day. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we get up, and then we had to go. And then we ate at dinner, breakfast. We had to pray, and after we ate. And then we have to go back and in the playroom to pray again. And went to school. We prayed, went to school, and we prayed at dinner time. We prayed at supper time. So we prayed and prayed and prayed all the time. And I always think, how come God didn't hear us? I hated God. I really did have this, forgiving us. Till I learned that, it was God that was doing that, it was the nuns and the priest. And I learned to forgive them. A few years back, the chief, Cindy Woodhouse, handed me tobacco. Well, my brother was supposed to go, he couldn't go. Ruth couldn't go, she got in an accident, and my other brother couldn't go. And then my sister had passed away, so I was next in line to go. So, and it was exciting to come to Rome with me. I took the tobacco. Then on the way home, I kind of hesitated. I don't want to go. It was exciting to go, but again, we have to go and see the Pope. And all the things that happened to us in the residential school, So I met with my children. I had three children at home, and I told them I'm going to Rome. I was asked to go to Rome, and they were so happy. Then I told them my story. I never told my kids my story. Know what happened to me in this school. I never told them what the sick from is. And they said, Mom, if you don't want to go, don't go. But go for your healing. So I went. And we went to Rome to ask the Pope to come to Canada. So we were over there. And I was over there. The lady that escorted me said, can you leave me for 4 hours? For those 4 hours I prayed for my sisters that were gone already, you know, for all the kids that passed away, they didn't make it home. And I cried and I screamed and I yelled in my pillow. For 4 hours I prayed. And I told my children, I don't know if I can do this. So I didn't know that they phoned the chief, and the chief came and met me and said, are you ready to go? I said, you don't have to go. And after I finished praying, I said, okay, I'll call. And then I said, I'm okay now. I'll go. So, and the next day we went. And Phil Fontaine and I met the Pope, Francis. And when I shook his hand, he had the softest hands, always a beautiful soft hands, and his eyes were so kind. And he came from Argentina, so I knew that he understood the native people. And in my mind, as I shook his hand, I said, feel the hurt, feel my pain. And he went like that. So I said that in my mind to him. And he went like that. So when I came home, it was very hard because I was sexually abused by a priest when I was 6 years old. And when I seen all those the bishops and the priests and with the Pope, I forget, the Pope was okay, but when they were all dressed in black, I sweat, fainted and fell down. But I kept, God, why did you send me here? Why are you so mean, God? Why? I was talking to him. And then after that, I forgave the priest that did that to me. Forgave the nuns. Because that must have happened to them too. That must have happened to the nuns and then must have happened to the priest too. So I forgave, I came back. And I forgave. And it was the hardest thing in my life to do. But I'm a survivor. And I'm glad I went. And you know, we're all God's children. In the Philippines, we're all our brothers and sisters, because you all kind of look alike. And you know, there's a lot of Filipinos in Winnipeg that keep our children, watch our children. And all of them, some of the little kids, they speak our Filipino too. You know, when they come back to our reserve, you know. So, welcome, my sisters and brothers and children that you come to Canada. It's a pleasure to meet every one of you and welcome you, even though you're not helping, you know. Thank you for inviting us here. It's a pleasure to come. Akchimiwach.
Two-story It's just about the 11
Okay. So, are you done with your presentation?
For me?
Yeah. Is that on for your presentation for today? Like,
Yeah.
but later we will have content para later.
Yeah.
So yeah. Do you have questions for the presenters today about their stories? No questions? No?
Too shy, they're too shy.
You're too shy? No, it's okay. Don't be shy.
You can ask us anything.
Yeah, you can ask them anything.
I have a question. So you were all at the residential schools. Were you all sent back to your families at the same time, or were you sent back separately?
Separately. My sisters, my brothers and I went first, then she stayed behind. She stayed behind another 2 years, I think. Yeah, but the rest of us went home, and then we went into different schools in Portage to Prairie. Yeah. But I don't know about Lorraine. Did you stay behind too? Yeah, you stayed.
I stayed till it only went up to grade 9. So I had a choice without my parents' consent. I filled out a form. It was either to go back to another residential school, which would be Assiniboia, or go home to Long Plain and go to school from there, or stay in a private home in Portage. And because I love sports, there was no sports activities in Long Plain, there was no organized sports, so I chose to live in a private home in Portage, thinking I could go home on the weekends, but that wasn't the case, because they still treated the private home placement students as if they were still in residential school, so you weren't allowed to go home on the weekends. I stayed there till I graduated from grade 12, but I was in a very loving home. I was in a home that really took care of us and became part of the family. But there was other ones that didn't have the same treatment as I had. Some of them were still experiencing abuse and neglect and stuff like that. But I was really fortunate to be in a really good home. But
Yeah, so some stayed behind and some of us left, yeah. Like I think you stayed behind another year, or I forget how long you
No,
stayed.
I went home with you guys, and when I was 13, they sent me back, and I ran away twice.
Oh, yeah.
You ran
Oh,
away
that's the other
twice.
thing.
Yeah, oh, that one was Lorraine.
First time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The other thing too, I forgot to mention in my presentation is that we did try to run away from the residential school. We did, but we were always caught. Yeah, and
You
then we were-
didn't report it to your parents, the way they treat you inside the residential
There was
school?
no communication with them.
There's no.
Yeah, there was no communication with them at all for us to tell our parents. I remember one year, one Christmas, we went home. I remember that, and I wanted to so much tell my mom. They were wondering why I didn't want to go back into the car to go back.
Yeah.
And I remember crying and crying so much, but I couldn't even tell my mom. This is how we're being treated out there. So yeah, so we had no choice but to go home. Yeah. Some of us stayed behind and some of us were left.
But you went on to Marymount, yeah?
Yeah, then we went out to Marymount, which was run by another group of Catholic nuns again. They were all different. Black and white though. Black and white. Marymount was totally different. They treated us good there. None of that abuse that we from that residential school. Because I think there were different denominations of Catholics, like different kind of Catholics, you know, and those ones were from Sandy Bay were very, very strict. And the ones in Marymount were not as strict, they were more, yeah, we were treated very good. And I got to eat there too. Yeah. I didn't have to steal food there.
Okay, I also have a question. This might be a no-brainer question, but this is just for the benefit of those who do not know. What really is a residential school? What is a residential school?
I guess the residential schools were formed in the 1918 or something like that, and
Yeah, early 1900s. I'll talk about it in my
she's gonna talk
presentation.
about
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, that'll be her turn now.
Okay. So just a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Is there an option for you to not go to that school?
No, no, there was
No.
no option, no,
No
no.
option.
We were boarded there.
So it really is
The buses
compulsory.
came and picked us up. And up north, the planes came to pick up the kids way up north. But for us, in boats. But here, the buses came, or else in cars, or the police came and picked us up.
So what will happen if your mom tries to hide you during that time?
Oh, they would
Go to jail.
Yeah, they'd go to jail, or
When
they
they take the rations away, like the
Yeah.
food
yeah.
from the family, they would take, you wouldn't get
So
any
it is
rations.
like compulsory to you to go to that
It was compulsory,
Yeah.
and we had no choice. We had no choice, we had to go. Yeah,
Some ran away with their families, with their kids into the bushes.
yeah, they did that.
But
yeah.
if they, when they were caught, they were still caught. And they were punished though.
Yeah, so, yeah,
I have a
we had no
question.
choice, we had no
So-
choice.
You talk about during your time in residential school and the healing. How about those time in between? Like, what was your life after residential school?
Pardon me, I-
What
What
was your
was your
life?
life after
After
residential?
residential school. Well, you know, I'm glad you asked that question, because some of us did not live well after residential school. Some of us became alcoholics, some of us went into the drug scene, some of us just floated around. No, we didn't have, I'm not talking about everybody. I'm just talking about me and some of my family members. We didn't do well after residential school. So that's why me and my siblings and some of my relatives, because we got into the crime, we went into crime and into the drug scene and into the drinking. We ended up in courts, and we ended up in a different like a jail. Yeah. So a lot of us didn't do well. It was not until we kind of grew up a little bit, and actually I know for myself, I got a lot of teachings from Marymount. The nuns there taught us how to, just, Ruth, you shouldn't be behaving like this, we don't want you sitting in jail for the rest of your life, go to school, like that. They encouraged us.
Mrs. Tegawala was really good.
Yeah, Miss Tegawala was really good. She really taught us, you don't want to live this life. You shouldn't live this life, You should go to school. Encouraged us to go to school, to go back to school. Yeah.
It's a long
So it was a
process.
whole different environment. Yeah. So
And
yeah.
that's why you see a lot of Native people are in jails, a lot of Native people are on Main Street, because those are the people did not heal.
Mm-hmm.
And people make fun of them, Indians are alcoholics, Indians are thieves, then the Indians go to jail, There's a reason why they took our culture away, they took our language away, they took our families away. We didn't know how to become parents. I didn't know how to become a mom and dad. I mean, a mom until I went to 3 parenting skills before I became a mom. Because I didn't know how to hold. I used to spank my children because I used to be spanked. So I spanked my kids with and then after I took these courses, I didn't spank them. My first set of kids, and there was 4 of them, they became alcoholics and drug addicts because the way I treated them. My 3 youngest ones, totally different. She's a sex girl and they have jobs and all that. Because I didn't hit them. In the first set of kids, I used to hit them. I didn't know how to love them.
Yeah.
And the second kid is totally different from my family.
Yeah. And it's because the first residential school that we went to, there was a lot of abuse. There was no love. Are you kidding? You couldn't hug anybody there. No. There was none of that. It was very, very cold.
Even though she was my sister, there was a lot of times I could not go and talk to her. I could not talk to my brothers. They were on the other side. There was no way. If we talked to them, we would get slapped. Even though I could see my brothers. So this day, we're not very close to our brothers because we weren't allowed to talk to
The
them.
connection, yeah.
Yeah, it took a lot of healing, a lot of work, a lot of years of where I'm in my 70s now, and I still kind of bothers me what happened to me, but I've learned to, that's, they probably know that too. And like I said, when we went home, I remember one Christmas we went home. I remember going home. I think the first year, maybe the first year after I came home, because all I knew was to pray. That's all I knew was to pray. Pray. So I go home and I prayed to my younger brothers and sisters that I first met, because we didn't see them for a long time. So my mom said, "What are you doing?" I said, my mom was a Christian, by the way, but my father was a traditional man too. So my mom said, "What are you doing this?" "Oh, I'm teaching them how to pray." And I used to teach my little brothers and sisters how to pray, because that's all I knew, right? I didn't know how to play with them. So, yeah, so I prayed a lot with them, and I taught them how to pray. Yeah. So it was.
There was 15 in our family, brothers and sisters. There's 5 boys, 10 girls, and half the older ones were close together. We're not close to the younger ones. We have no little bond there,
because we didn't grow up with them.
Yeah, and they don't speak our language.
Mm-hmm.
Us, we can speak our language.
That's the other thing. We used to sneak our language out. When we were late at night, we would talk in our language. But you would never, ever, should never. If you were caught, you would really be punished. Really severely punished if you were caught talking in language. But we managed somehow. Somehow at late at night, sleeping at night, and we would talk in our language, whisper, Yeah. And like, I keep talking about food. one of the things was, see, the girls there, I mean the children that lived in Sandy Bay, they used to go home weekends, right? They used to go home weekends, but we weren't allowed. The kids that came from far away, that's us, they called us the faraway kids. So we never went home. But the kids that went there, they lived right there in Sandy Bay in the community, so they got to go home weekends. So I made a deal with one of the girls. You bring me bannock every time you come from Sunday. So she would bring me bannock. Yeah. So yeah, I learned.
Any more questions? All right.
Okay. I just want to say,
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to say thank you, because we as newcomers, when we come, we don't know the history, and the idea that you have of Canada is a very different idea, and I know that this is new history even for Canadian-born, white settlers.
Right.
So it's been on the go. So, but for immigrants, it's even like more shocking to hear all of this, because the idea that you are coming, to a country that is very welcoming, and to learn this, kind of like dark part of history.
The dark history.
It really enlightens, us as well, because I feel that sometimes we could go, and as you said, right, like sometimes we might come across to somebody who is in the process of healing, or is like, it's in the path of the like trauma,
Right.
Intergenerational trauma.
Yes.
And it's very easy for people that don't know the path of that person to say, oh, as you said, right, like label somebody and label a whole group of people, saying this so and so, like this, why are they in the streets? Is their choice, or like different? But learning the story of everybody makes you understand that this is something that we shouldn't jump to conclusion to say, okay, like this is for a reason. This group of people have been hurt and have been abused and traumatized. So. And for us, it's new history, right? Like when we write our tests to become citizens, it's just one paragraph about Indigenous peoples, right? So, and it's very, like, I don't know if it has changed, but it's very brief and not really anything about
residential schools and any of that, right?
Right,
So I
yeah.
think like every opportunity we have to hear somebody, and that's what I'm thanking you, because it's so much vulnerability and so much of your own story that you are sharing with us,
Mhm.
that I assume that it's not easy to relieve that.
Mhm.
But it puts in perspective, and it teaches as well to be kind
Mhm.
and be more even grateful for you to share your land, not just with the old settlers, but new immigrants coming
Right.
and taking, and you are sharing resources and all of that. So,
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I just wanted to add one more thing. My sister, my oldest sister, Patsy, was the youngest child in all of Canada that was in a residential school, and she was only 2 years old when she was placed in a residential school, and that's where she grew up.
There's
The
a
youngest.
stepsister.
Yeah.
My dad was in the army and his wife died,
Yeah, and that's it.
and there was no place, nobody to keep her. So they put
They
her.
put her in a residential school. 2 years old, that's where she grew up. Yeah. And she done really well with herself, though. She really became she just did really well. She wrote a book actually, and it's all about forgiveness and healing. So she didn't have a good life either. So, but for us, we got to move on, And here we are. And we moved on. We're okay. Yeah.
There's a book coming out, Anne has a book.
And one, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What is it called?
Yeah, she hasn't put a title to it. She's still interviewing survivors.
Yeah.
And it came out in 2025. So
Mhm.
she's still interviewing survivors mostly from Long Plain. It's about resident school survivors, so it'll be out. She's written 3 other books. One is on immigrants that came to Canada. The other one is about gangs, and the other one is about children that were in care. So there's if you look up her name, Anne Mahon, Mahon. She's also a chancellor for the University of Manitoba, so she writes books as well too. So she's currently in the process of still
Yeah,
writing the
she's
book.
got interview me, yeah.
Yeah.
She's finished my story, I got
Okay.
it.
Yeah, she finished ours as well too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if you're looking for more stories, that book will be out in 2025. I also brought some videos of short clips of survivors that were interviewed, videotaped. I think Linda's on there. I'm not too sure if you were no, you weren't interviewed in the group. Yeah, I'm on there. So if we have time, I can show the clip after I'm done my presentation.
Any more questions? None? Yeah, I have one. Well, anyways, I really believe that we are entitled to our own opinion. So, if I were to ask you, why do you think is the reason why there is a residential school?
Why there was a residential
Mhm.
school?
Because they wanted to kill the Indians.
Yeah, they wanted to kill the Indians. They wanted to get rid of us.
That's why you're not allowed to talk in your own language.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the purpose. The Prime Minister at that time wanted to get rid of the Indian people.
All right. Any more questions? None. So yeah, before we proceed to our short break, I would like to comment about the picture behind, because that was a residential school, right?
Yeah,
It was introduced earlier as a residential school, and now you are using that one as a place of healing. So that building is still standing.
Yeah, it's a museum now.
Right, so that it's a museum now. So where is that located? Or
In
it will be tackled later?
Yeah, she's gonna talk about it.
Ah, okay. Okay, so yeah, we will proceed with our short break, and we will start 10:40 for the presentation by Lorraine Daniels.
Okay.
To learn more about the contemporary realities, please help me welcome Ms. Lorraine Daniels. Do you want me to turn the light?
No, I'll just talk a little bit about my experience and then I'll go into my, So I'm a survivor. I left home when I was 6 going on 7. I went to 3 residential schools. Brandon 1 year, Bertle 1 year, and Sanibee for 5 years. I never questioned my parents why I was moved around, and I later found out as an adult, probably within the last 10 years, I started questioning why. And it was because my dad was Catholic and my mother was Protestant, so that's why we were moved around. And I did spend 5 years in Sand Bay, and part of those years I was with Ruth and Linda and her family and 2 of my siblings. And so when they talk about their cousin that was that had to eat the porridge, and the nun made her eat her vomit, I sat across from her that day too. It was on a weekend, and I remember seeing that nun forcing her to eat that vomit, and my sister didn't like certain foods because they were foreign to her, and things that we didn't eat at home that she just didn't like. So she was always getting into trouble with the nuns because of her not eating the food, and probably really stubborn too. She's very stubborn, even to this day. She's stubborn. but she said that stubbornness probably was because helped her survive the residential school system. And so just again too, just their sister Marlene that was always came to the rescue, and my other sister my oldest sister also came to the rescue. So they were both punished too as well too. And my sister, my oldest sister, we talked about my youngest sister when after they brought her down and had her on the table. She was stark naked, and after they had beaten her up, and they hid her in the infirmary, and one of the nuns, Sister Matilda, she is one of the nicer nuns, snuck my oldest sister up there to go and see her, and my sister was in a fetal position, just black and blue. Her, she had just see the slits of her eyes, and she thought they were coming to finish her off, and so my sister was so traumatized from seeing that. She couldn't talk about it. She still hasn't gone for therapy. She just chooses not to because she doesn't trust anybody. And all she could do was, she couldn't tell the story, but she drew pictures. So that trauma just stayed with her. But she's able to talk about it more. So those are some of the things that I witnessed. And even witnessing that is, it traumatizes you as well too. So that's still embedded in my memory. And so I think those are probably the most horrific experiences that I had, was watching my young sister being beaten up and brought down as an example that Linda talked about. They were brought her to the dining room, and the girls sat on one side, the boys on one side, and there was a table right in the middle, and brought her down, and just, she was so black and blue, and I still recall that. But to this day, I always talk about this because we need to know that some of us did not stay there. Some of us have moved on and got the therapy, the counseling that we need. And so I used to go with my little sister to her counseling sessions, and she had therapy all those years before they even had the common experience money that they gave us to compensate for the pain and the torture that we endured. So I spent time with her, and she moved on too in her life. She went on and did she got her bachelor's degree, and she went on and did her master's in psychology. So I think because she wanted to overcome and understand what she went through, and so that really helped her. She also went on to become, she sat on council, I think you were on council with her at the time. She also went on to become a successful business owner. To this day, she still is a successful business owner. And so things like that, people need to know that even though you experience trauma, you deal with the pain and the suffering, that you can still overcome. They've survived, and my little sister and I and my older sister talked about it, and she said, I could have been one of them that never made it home because of the severe beating that she got. And so I just want to share that with you. And for myself too, my grandparents, we shared the same grandparents. I grew up in that household, and I was taken away too when I was just starting to learn about the medicines. My grandma I lived with my grandparents and my mother and dad in the same household. And they were traditional people, but they also followed their Christian ways. So I learned to embrace both. But it's taken me so long to accept my traditional ways and the cultural activities that come with it. Because of the shame, we were shamed in the residential school, and it's taken me so long to accept that, so I take it one step at a time, and I question everything before I get involved. And so that shame stayed with me for a long time, and even losing my language, I was ashamed to speak my language because they shamed us. They took that away from us, but slowly I'm learning. And I just admire Ruth and Linda for hanging on to that language. You know, I wish I could speak like them, but I can't. I try, and my Ojibwe language is broken. So, but I'm still learning, and it's going to take probably. I'm in my 70s too, so it's taken me a lifetime to learn about my culture and about my language. But I still continue on in my walk. I also follow the Christian way. I went to, I've got a master's in Christian educational ministries. I also have a bachelor's degree, but I'm learning about our traditional ways, so I'm trying to blend the two together. And if I didn't have that, you know, I wouldn't be able to do my job, because if I hadn't healed, I'd be still angry, but it is taken small steps at a time. And so, you know, I'm still in my journey of my healing, but I'm able to do my work in a gentle and warm and inviting and welcoming way, and to be an ambassador for our community, and also for myself and my family and those that are unable to speak for themselves. So with that, I'm gonna do a presentation so you'll learn more about the residential school system and why we have it, a little bit of history, and also the challenges that we've experienced as a museum, as an organization. So with that, I'm going to start. Which So this presentation covers the history, the vision and challenges, opportunities of the National Indigenous Residential School Museum of Canada. It's governed by Indigenous Board of Directors, for survivors and intergenerational survivors. And the stories are told through Indigenous voices, and it's also Indigenous. The uniqueness of this building is that it's located within a building where it was once a place of hurting, and now it's a place of healing. It's a place where culture and history meet. And the significance of this building is it's a testimony to the world of its history, is now a national and international importance. The building is owned by Long Plain First Nation and managed by the economic arm of Long Plain, which is the Arrowhead Development Corporation. And also the uniqueness of it is the museum is strategically located within the building, and so it's owned by the survivors of our community, and it's internationally known. It's owned by the survivors of the residential schools. Okay. Okay. So our mission statement is to inform and to educate the public, the impacts that it's had on the generations, and also the intergenerational survivors. And also it's to honor the survivors, preserving their stories, their knowledge, their wisdom and experiences. The mandate also is to support the establishment of the residential school and museum, and so that the museum will be established on the Long Plain Reserve, and it was named after a survivor, Rufus Prince. He was also a former residential school survivor, and the mandate was from the Assembly of First Nations. So the vision of the museum is a place, again, where we can learn, share, heal together, so that we can all understand how the forces have changed multiple generations of our Indigenous peoples. I just want to talk a little bit about the vision. It also includes traditional practices and knowledge, and I want to acknowledge our former chief, Dennis Meaches, and former chief, Bernie Daniels. He's also our knowledge keeper. He's also our in-house advisor for the museum. and they are the founding members behind this vision to have a museum in the former residential school. So why do we have a museum? For the survivors, it's to create a memorial, to honor survivors and their families, support the survivors, to educate both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and how how it impacts on present-day Indigenous life. Also for the generations, it's to understand the impact again on communities. Again, it's for a place for everyone to learn, heal, and move forward. To have an understanding so that all Canadians, regardless of race, have that opportunity to learn this part of Canadian history, and also for the international community. Museum also to include the repatriation of artifacts. This year we're going to be working on that, to document, preserve, and archive history of this era. Also to encourage healing and reconciliation activities. We're doing reconciliation activities throughout the year, but we also have one whole day where we just invite communities. It's a public event where everyone comes together to celebrate life, and because throughout the year we talk about the truth, and so we set aside one day where we can all share and learn and just enjoy life together. So also to provide a safe atmosphere for survivors, the families, communities, and visitors who visit the museum. So we're located right next door to the city of Portage la Prairie. The only thing that divides is a street. We're just on the south side, and it's centrally located, so it's an ideal location for tourism. So there's this is one of 139 former residential schools that are spread across the country. Just to continue why, it's a public commemoration of the history and legacy of residential school system. The building itself is a testament. It's a testimony to the world of its historical significance, even though it's a dark history, but people need to know that because it was hidden for too long. So now we need to expose the truth and to understand the devastating impacts of their system and how it has impacted the current health and well-being of Indigenous peoples, their families and communities, and today it still affects it. And I know that Ruth and Linda talked about it. And also to understand that intergenerational survivors have been indirectly affected by the residential schools because they were raised by survivors who have been so abused physically, emotionally, who lack parental skills. And one of the most profound and inevitable outcomes of the residential school system with this extreme negative social conditioning of residential school students. It's also a tourist destination. It's a space for community connection and to connect with schools. I just want to talk a little bit about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. Calls to action number 88 says refers to a day for a national day for truth and reconciliation to honor survivors, their families, communities, to ensure that the public commemoration of the history and legacy of the residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. So just continuing on with the question why, is to have an understanding of the historical trauma and the effects of the residential schools. And it's a loss of language, loss of traditional teachings and culture, the family unit is broken and destroyed, homelessness, lack of housing, over-incarceration in the prison system, systemic poverty, health-related illnesses such as diabetes, mental and physical health, marginalization and violence against Indigenous women and men, and substance abuse and addictions. So going back to 1879, the Davin report, in his report, he recommended a boarding school. It was based on a model from the United States, the Carlisle Industrial Boarding School in Pennsylvania. And so at the time, Prime Minister John A. Macdonald implemented a boarding school system based on that aggressive American policy on Aboriginal education. The day school did not work because the influence of the wigwam was stronger than the influence of the school. So the separation of children from their parents had taken root. So another report, Dr. Peter Bryce, who was a medical inspector, 1907. He was sent to assess the health conditions of the schools. In his report, Dr. Bryce was the medical inspector for Department of Indian Affairs, and he did not attempt to disguise the horror of what he found. So in his report, he called the tuberculosis epidemic a national crime, and the consequences of the inadequate government funding, poorly constructed schools, sanitary and ventilation problems, inadequate diet and clothing and medical care was in his report. So parts of his incriminating report was suppressed by Duncan Campbell Scott. He was the superintendent of Indian Affairs at the time, who also terminated the position of the medical inspector, Dr. Bryce, because of his report. Clearly the health of the Aboriginal children was not going to be made a priority. His request for additional funding to address some of the basic health concerns were denied. Dr. Bryce published his report in its entirety under the title "The Story of a National Crime," being a record of the health conditions of the Indians in Canada from 1904 to 1921. So another one, Duncan Campbell Scott. And this is what Linda and Ruth had talked about. Why did they have residential schools? To get rid of the Indian problem. And so his objective was to continue until there's not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the public politic, and there's no Indian question and no Indian department. And these are the words of Duncan Campbell Scott. And he made school attendance compulsory for all Indigenous children 1920 from the age of 7. Yeah. I have a picture of a young boy. His name was Thomas Moore. I don't have it in my PowerPoint. But he went to school in Regina, and in 1874, the first picture, he's wearing traditional clothing. I'll pass it around after. And he has the long hair, and in the second picture, he's holding a pistol and wearing a military-style uniform and short hair, and his left hand hangs relaxed and empty. So the picture represents an uncivilized and potentially dangerous person. The second picture represents a civilized, unarmed, and therefore unthreatening person. So I'm just going to pass that around if you want to have a look at it. So just some timelines of residential schools. So the earliest missionary school was established in Quebec City. 1831, the Mohawk Indian Residential School opens. 1879, the Davin Report came out. There's 11 schools already in 1880. 1883, the residential schools were authorized in Western Canada. So in 1892, the government and church partners began. The government sponsored and provided funding for the schools, and the churches managed them. They were all different denominations that ran different schools. So 1896, there were 45 schools. By the 1900s, there were 73 schools, so they were on a mission to have all these residential schools right across Canada. So by late 1907 was the Bryce Report. Duncan Campbell Scott, he makes attendance compulsory. And again, 1920, Dr. Peter Bryce published the report, The National Crime. And again, 1940, the government began to apply provincial curriculum standards. And by 1950, over 40% of the teachers that were teaching in residential school had no professional training, and the students only spent half a day on academics. The rest of the time they were used as laborers, you know, and these were just young kids, you know, working in the farms and in the fields, and just doing laundry and stuff like that. They weren't teaching them at the level of the rest of Canada. So 1915 began the closure of residential schools. It was recommended. So there was only 60 schools in 1960. In 1969, the government and church partnerships ended. In 1979, there was only 12 schools. In 1975, the Portage Residential School closed. 1996, the last school closed, which was in Saskatchewan, the Gordon Residential School. In 2006, the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement came about, and the apology came in 2008. In 2015 came the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released their final report. I'm just going down the history again. In 1915, the Portage Residential School opened with 70 students, 7 staff members. They purchased 56 acres of land. And 1972, there was a very serious accident. All the children that were on that plane, they all perished. There was 8 of them along with the pilot. They were on their way home for summer holidays, and the plane crashed as they were going up from the Winnipeg airport. And I had one of the band members from up north, Oxford House. They came for a visit and told me that they had put the wrong fuel in the plane, and that's why it crashed. So they all died. There's a picture of the students that died in the plane crash at the museum, and one of the students was an up-and-coming writer. She was a short story writer, and she had won a few awards before those years. So in 1981, 45 acres of land was purchased along with the building, and this is when Ernie Daniels was chief. And now the building is housed in the former Yelko College and UTC offices. So there was a lot of different organizations that came and went, and so the building, the inside of the building is in pretty good condition, but there's still lots of work that needs to be done. So this is Rufus Prince. He was they named the building after him, and they honored him as well too. And he was also a treaty rights advocate and a World War II veteran. We're going to be changing the name of the building shortly, but we will still honor him and have probably a picture up and a little bit of his description of what he's done and how he's contributed to the building. And in 2001, Long Plain seek to establish a National Indigenous Residence School Museum, and it received a provincial heritage status in 2005. 2006 to 18, the building housed various organizations. The museum was operating as a project and closed for a while. I think in between that time, there was different directors, and Ruth was one of the directors during that time. And so it wasn't open consistently, and but there was a lot of research that was done, and Ruth was instrumental in keeping the museum going at the time. In 2018, I came along and set up the office and the museum in 2 small rooms with the displays, and 2020 became a National Historic Site. And right now we're working with Parks Canada to have the National Historic Site plaque. They will be unveiled in the year 2025 of June next year. Before I go into the Orange Shirt Day, I just want to talk a little bit about why it's so important to learn about residential schools. The life we talked about our experiences in residential school. The journey to residential schools was often a long one, particularly for Indigenous children. who came from communities that were thousands of miles away. Some could walk to the schools, but many arrived by wagon, train, boat, and later on by bus. And when they remembered that long journey, many of the survivors recall feeling like they were walking into a prison. When they entered the schools, they were robbed of their identities. Their hair was cut, deloused. They were stripped of their garments, possessions, and clothing. And clothing was in uniforms, and they were called by their Christian names or by their numbers instead of their own names. And for a few students who had been prepared by their parents, the schools may have initially appeared less ominous, but for those who were taken to the schools by force, the experience was all the more traumatic. Underfunding was the source of many problems of the schools. The government had devised a per capita funding formula in 1892 to try and control operating costs. Payment was based on the needs of each individual school, but the rapid development of new schools combined with competition between church groups for funding soon made it impossible for the formula to work properly. School administration competed for more students, regardless of the poor condition of the school buildings. As the funding continued to dwindle, everyone within the schools suffered. It became difficult for the schools to hire qualified teachers. The appalling poverty of the schools also produced impossible working conditions. Staff worked long hours for meager wages in unsanitary and overcrowded environments. Many of them took out their frustrations on the children, so that's where the abuse came in. The children themselves were extremely vulnerable, physically and psychologically compromised by the inadequate food, clothing, shelter provided by the schools. Students were susceptible to the constant outbreak of influenza and TB. They were also subjected to corporal punishment that was sometimes so severe that they found themselves hospitalized. In addition, many of the children were sexually abused. Indeed, the lack of oversight combined with the low level of qualifications required to work at the schools often attracted persons unsuitable to work with the children. Loneliness. Indigenous children were separated from their parents, grandparents, and extended families, including siblings who may have been at the same school, suffered from the feelings of acute loneliness, spiritual emptiness, and a sense of abandonment by their families. A situation made worse as they struggled with the need to learn a new language and the stress of living in an unsafe environment. And a lot of the children weighed the risk of running away against the cost of staying at the school. I think Linda had mentioned that we had attempted to run away, but they found us, and we went back to the school, and we weren't severely punished, I think, at the time, because their brother was a boys supervisor at the time, so they were very lenient on how they punished us. Many decided that the risk was worth it. While some were unsuccessful, they were usually caught by the police and returned to school. Others died in an attempt. If you know the story of Chani Wenjak, it's at the museum. He died on his way trying to go home. He followed the tracks and he froze to death. I recall a cousin of mine that tried to run away in the winter time and froze her toes, and they punished her and humiliated her and brought her to the dining room where that used to be our study area as well too. And they brought her and her friend that had run away, and she was already of age where she was 13, 14 at the time. So you're very self-conscious of your body. They pulled her pants down in front of everybody and strapped her, and so they're very humiliating. So you witness things like that, and again, it's living in fear, like Linda had said. So in the aftermath of residential schools, before long, Indigenous communities began to experience the full effects of dysfunction and indeed devastation caused by the residential school system. Generations of survivors have been raised from as young as 4 or 5 years old, and with Ruth and Linda's sister, she was 2 years old. in a family made up of government and church officials and staff, school staff, far short of parental role models, the teachers and school administrators. They used harsh disciplinary methods and neither encouraged nor showed affection. They never showed us any love, or we were never hugged. Many survivors were not equipped with the skills to become loving partners and parents and had difficulty expressing parental love. For myself too, I had a really hard time expressing love, and my grandkids and my own kids taught me to hug. So whenever I meet my kids and my grandkids, you know, we hug each other. And out of the blue, sometimes when my grandkids are playing around, you know, they say, "Cuckoo, I love you." And you know, that's so meaningful because you didn't hear that. You don't hear that. You didn't hear that all your life.
Right, yeah.
Residential school, you're institutionalized, and almost like we're like held prisoners, you know, against our own culture. So I want to go into Orange Shirt Day. This is a day of truth and reconciliation. So we've had it's growing bigger and bigger. There's so much interest. I think after we had the national historic site designation, and after they discovered that 215 unmarked graves and Kamloops, the interest just grew. So we partner with different groups. We partner with church groups. We partner with City of Portage. Just lots of partnerships. There's even churches from Winnipeg that come out and participate. It's an overwhelming response of how can they help. So this is a day where we come together, and these are just some amazing pictures of bringing the communities together. And the bottom left hand corner is there is a plaque to honor the kids that died in the plane crash. And then we also have the youth that do the drumming. It's taught by a former survivor, and he's teaching them the songs. So it's and then we have the walk from the city hall to Portage, so that's everybody together. And this year we're having we have security every year that will look after the walk. But this year we're including horses. So I asked Derek if he could dress up the horses in orange somehow. So it's going to be a beautiful sight. So if you have a free day, September 30th, I'll leave this with you. So this year too, we're going to have we have a kid zone where they're going to have some bouncy castles and some. We're going to have an area where they can read. We have someone that's going to do just little. What is that story called? It's about Orange Shirt Day.
It's about Orange Shirt Day.
Yeah,
Kids
yeah. Kids Corner, Kids Zone. So on the side we have the eagle statue. It lights up orange at night. This is beautiful. This statue was donated by Airhead Development Corporation, and they commissioned someone to have the statue installed, and that's to represent the hope for resident school survivors, and that's what you see. And the bottom right-hand corner, that was donated by R.B. Russell School in Winnipeg. It was done by an intergenerational survivor. Her mother had gone to residential school, so that was donated by them, and so we have that again on the ground. This is the beginning of the healing garden, and that's going to be a big project in itself. So that's something that's going to be worked on down the road. Might not happen in my lifetime, but I'm hoping that somebody younger will come along and just be on fire to do the work for the museum in the grounds. And I had when they discovered the 215 unmarked graves, we had such an outpouring of care and love from the community. So people just placed all kinds of stuff in, stuffed animals and all kinds of pictures at the foot of the eagle. And because I'm still learning about my culture, I asked Linda, what do we do with the stuff that's still out there, because we had to find a way to remove it. And some of the stuff is in the museum, but I had to get the advice of Linda's advice, because she's more into the culture. Linda teaches, she has cultural workshops and activities. So this is one of the survivors, not a survivor, she's a survivor of residential school, but she was one of them that died in a plane crash. And we were able to find some articles that she wrote, and she won some awards for her short story writing. And at the time it was Winnipeg Tribune, so if you ever want to do some research, go into Winnipeg Tribune, and it's Iona Weena's. And she talks about the different worlds, because she came from up north, and their lifestyle was way different than going into an urban community. So I just want to talk a little bit about, there was 8 students along with the pilot that died. So in 2018, Long Plain honored them, including the pilot, at the annual Orange Shirt Day. More than 60 members from Oxford House and other Northern First Nations were in attendance. So a plaque with their names was erected at the base of the eagle statue. Thank you. These are just some pictures of residential school. The top left hand is George Meach's. He went to Cecilia Jeffrey School, so again the cutting of the hair. Some of them they shaved their hair right off. Linda talked about getting our hair cut, like a Dora haircut. So a lot of us all had we had the same haircut. And the bottom left hand corner is this was taken in at the Portage, the former Portage Residential School, and they had cattle at the time, and they had I think they grew vegetables. And the little boy you see with the hands in his pocket, that's my father. And he talked about, he never told me this story. Just my younger brother, my youngest brother would sit and talk and ask him questions about the residential school, and I never did. His hands, he went to, I guess they were teaching him how to brand the cows, and he didn't do it properly. So the supervisor grabbed the branding tool and hit his hand on his wrist here with the tool. So I never looked at his hands, but apparently he had a scar from that. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. I don't know why it came up, but anyway, this is Ruth and Linda's oldest sister, the one on the left-hand side. This one here, Patsy. That she was the youngest one that was in residential school, and that was taken at Portage Residential School. She was the youngest survivor. And children as far away as Norway House, Oxford House, Cross Lake, the Paw, and a small number of Inuit children attended the school. And the evergreen trees that you see on the site were planted by the children who attended school there. And if the trees could talk, they could tell about the loneliness, the hurt, the sadness that these children suffered. So this next picture is about the residential schools across Canada. There's 139. So there was over 150 children that were removed from homes to attend these schools. Over 6,000 had died in residential schools, maybe more now. They're still working on ground scanning in the different communities. Over approximately 70,000 residential school survivors are still living. I just want to talk a little bit about the children that had died, and I had recently went to visit Phyllis Webstad. Do you know who Phyllis Webstad is? She wrote, she was the founder of the Orange Shirt Day, and there's a story about her where she went to school with an orange shirt and she never got it back. So she's written a series of books. She also goes across Canada and talks about her story. And I was really blessed to meet this young lady, and she took us out to St. Joseph's Mission School, and it's part of a reserve called sugarcane. So we went to see the school is no longer standing there, but there was a big barn, and right around the barn they found anomalies, and out of there they found 50 human remains, and that whole area is fenced in, and there's 24/7 security, so you can't go past the fence. So in the corner of one of the corner of the fenced area is a really nice gravesite where they buried the nuns and the priests and whoever worked at the school. But right beside it was a small building, and in that building was an incinerator. And this is where and she tells the story, told me the story, and she told us, we went as a group, and she talked about the incinerator where they would take live babies and burn them in this incinerator. And that building is still there, it's still there. And there's a documentary coming out September 21. It's called Sugarcane, and it talks about that area, St. Joseph's Mission. And there's 3 men that talk about their mothers that had been that went to the residential school. I think there were different residential schools, and they were born in residential schools, and they were impregnated by the priests. So if you get a chance to see it, it'll come out on Netflix. So she talked about that. It's a very warm, gentle, loving lady that I met, and she is coming out next year to Orange Shirt Day. We already she already committed for next year, so she'll be there to tell her story. So I just wanted to share that with you. She'll be coming out September 30th next year. So the residential school, I don't know if you can see it there. It's Lima. In Alberta. It's in Alberta. It's just north there.
Yeah, it's just right there, Joseph.
Okay, yeah, okay. It's kind of in the middle, halfway up. It's just north of Kelowna, no, north of Kamloops. Yeah, right there. Yeah, that's where we went. It's part of Williams Lake. So the children who died, the legacy of the residential schools. Odds of dying for children in Indian residential schools is 1 to 25, and this is from CBC News. The odds of dying for Canadians serving in World War II is 1 in 26. So that is pretty close, and you know that's tragic that many children had passed away in the residential schools. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges and issues that we have that we're faced with our museum, studying the museum as a tourism. And I always say these are our relatives. I think Ruth's father is in there, the tallest one here.
Yeah.
This one here.
Yeah.
This is my grandfather, and I think this is my dad.
Yeah, that's your dad.
That looks like Roy.
That looks like Roy, yeah.
Roy, I'm not too sure. But these are all our relatives. This is Frank. Is that Frank?
Yeah, that's Frank, yeah.
Angus, yeah.
Frank Merrick,
Yeah.
Then John Daniels.
And John, which one is?
Butcher.
When that?
In the middle, right beside Merrick there. Beside my dad.
Your dad is right here.
Butcher.
Butch right there?
Butcher,
Right there, yeah, okay.
That's a
Yeah,
relative.
yeah, that's my grand, or
Uncle.
uncle, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so I think back in the day, they did their dancing underground and their sun dances, and they started to come together and start dancing together as communities. So these are all from different, I think, the Dakota Plains is part of this, right, in Swan Lake?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So now that the culture is being revived through dance, dance is so important. It brings a community together. It brings it brings families together, and focusing on just living a good life as Indigenous people, and dancing and expressing themselves through dance. So the challenges and issues with the museum is that the tourism sector is new for us. The museum has policies and a governance policy that are outdated, so that's something we need to work on. And right now there's only 3 of us, actually 2 of us, and we have one that just came on board. And that's something we need to work on. We need to work on updating those policies. Tourism and interest in Indigenous residential school history is in great demand. We don't have enough staff to manage the demand. We've had, sometimes we have 100 people that come in one day, so we have to separate like 50 and 50 because the rooms are so small, but we manage somehow. And I think we have another large group coming.
Yeah.
And then we also have visitors from Europe and Germany, Japan. We've got a group coming from Japan in a couple of weeks' time, maybe next week. Yeah. We just have so much interest in the museum and the history of the residential schools, because you walk through the museum, it talks about the history. We talk about the first part of the tour is about our culture, how it was before we got into residential school, and then the residential school era, and then the post-residential school, which talks about all the things that are happening, like the missing and murdered women, the calls to action, the Pope visit, and then the last one is regaining our culture through dance. And then we have one room set aside specifically for those that have a difficult time going through the museum, or if you just want to sit and debrief, it's there. It's a welcoming place where it's for anyone that wants to sit there. And sometimes that room is used for counseling sessions from UTC or long plane. So it's it's a private area that anyone can use. So right now the building is not wheelchair accessible, and that's something that we're working on with. We've got some architects working with Chief and Council, and that's something that is being worked on, and lots of projects, but we're understaffed. So this year we're hoping to hire 2 more individuals to help with the museum. So again, like I said, we need more training for staff because it's a new sector, tourism sector. The building requires a lot of upgrades. It's a national museum, but lack of funding has prevented us from having a national representation on the board, and I know this is one of the long-term plans. And again, with limited resources, it's difficult to preserve resident school survivor stories, knowledge and wisdom that is invaluable to the Canadian heritage. And again, like I said, the museum has not been consistently open due to financial difficulties and high turnover of staff. The museum provides an avenue for the survivors, the families, and the communities, and everyone has the right to know and learn about the residential school era. It's a place to document, to preserve, and archive history of that era. It's a place to encourage healing activities and provide a safe environment for survivors, their families, communities, and all those who visit the museum. It's a place where history and culture meet. We operate on grants, donations, and it's Area Development Corporation, which is the economic arm of Long Plain, has provided the most financial support to date, and partnerships are so important. So just moving on to opportunities, working towards truth and reconciliation. Just another timeline. 2003, the Long Plain Chief and Council designated the former residential school as a historic place of significance through BCR, which is a Band Council resolution. So it's taken over 20 years to have it designated. 2005, it was designated as a provincial heritage site. 2010, the Prime Minister Harper addressed the statement of apology. 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Report with the 94 calls to action was released. 2019, the Indigneous was awarded with the Governor's Award for the inspiring ongoing efforts to achieve the vision of the museum. 2020, it was designated as a National Historic Site. 2022, April apology, address of His Holiness Pope Francis. And this is when Linda had gone to see the Pope with a group of individuals from Manitoba. 2023, we just received an award for the museum, October 19, 2023. Some of the partnerships that we have that's really helped us move forward is from the government. We were on our second grant with Prairie Scan. They're we're government funded right now, but we have to apply for grants every year. And so this year it's called Tourism Growth Fund, where we will be able to employ two more staff. The businesses, we have partnerships with different businesses in Portage. Corporations, again, too, we have the partnerships with Arrowhead. We have partnership with Portage Community Revitalization Corporation. We have fundraising committees. We have foundations that Winnipeg Foundation funded us 1 year for a project. And we get lots of individual donations. Universities, we've partnered with the University of Manitoba. They've done some amazing projects with us, and that report was just released to me last 2 weeks ago. So that's something that Ruth looks after the elders in the community. So that's something that I have to work with Ruth to have the community report. And again, volunteers. Every year we have volunteers for the Orange Shirt Day, and throughout the year people volunteer. I belong to a church in Portage, and it's a house church, and they volunteer to come out every once in a while to come and help at the museum, and it's free volunteer. They just want to come out and see how they can help out. I guess I didn't talk, I was going to talk about University of Wisconsin. They came out 2 years ago, and they came with their students, and they were there for 1 week, and we shared our culture with them. We also planted a garden in the back, vegetable garden, vegetable and flower garden. And they came out again this year and planted, professor came out and planted a garden for us. Some of the projects that the University of Manitoba did, it's called What We Heard Report, and there were surveys presented to the community and the board of directors, and they partnered the strategic planning project, and they assigned students with 5 projects undertaken by the team. One was on policy review, one was on community engagement, one was on healing programs, research and precedent study. The other one was they prepared a site plan, a site map for the museum landscape for points of interest. And the other one was exhibition to collaborate with the museum to create a new exhibit and display relationship with land and residential schools, and how Indigenous people relate to the land. So there's ongoing dialogue and meeting with the university. So what's working? The support of Chief and Council and the local communities and organizations, support from Indigenous political organizations such as AFN and Manitoba Chiefs and Southern Chiefs, support from regional tribal councils. We have our Dakota Ojibwe Tribal Council that's in our region. Support from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. We just recently received a grant from Truth and Reconciliation to have our own shirt day. And the grants, they provide short-term projects. It's and training through the Associated Manitoba Museums. I took some courses through there, but it's not enough. We need to have more training, ongoing training with the staff. attended workshops and conferences about museums, using various types of social media to inform the public, and tours with visitors and resident school survivors to get the word out. Support group of residential school survivors and elders. So this was the announcement of the National Historic Site in 2020. I think we showed a video after that day, and so this is the day that it was designated. So some of the opportunities for more community museum development is to have more exhibits and kiosks, some language programming, Indigenous library, curator and museum office space, complementary business that would include a cafe, gift shop, gallery, office meeting space rentals, future development to include a cultural center and heritage center on the same site. The center would provide programming exhibits telling the story of Treaty 1 region and portage bands, a healing garden, a lecture theater, a memorial for those who never made it home. So by having a National Indigenous Residence School Museum, we will have the opportunity to share stories, history, legacy of the residential school system so that we can all know the story. In the words of a decorated Indigenous veteran, and these are his words to this Thomas Prince, to the Special Joint Committee of the House of Commons and the Senate in 1947, he states, so that we can all trust each other and walk together side by side, face this world having faith and confidence in one another. So what can you do to help? Show that you care, listen to an elder, learn about Indigenous people and their culture, continue to learn about residential schools, raise awareness, artistic expressions, challenge negative stereotypes, write a letter to a survivor, wear orange on Orange Shirt Day, educate yourself, show compassion, empathy, learn about the Indigenous culture, celebrate success, raise awareness, challenge negative stereotypes, and pressure governments. So thank you for providing an opportunity to share the challenges that the museum has faced. And with some of these challenges still before us, we continue to seek opportunities to grow and raise an awareness of why we must press forward to share our vision of the National Indigenous Residence School Museum with you. It was an honor to present our vision from a place of hurting to a place of healing. Chimiigwech, thank you.
Okay, before we proceed to question and answer portion, I'm just gonna turn on the light and it might steam, okay? Alright, do you have questions? Or do you need time to adjust for the lights?
I have a question.
Okay, there's a question.
Ray, can you explain briefly the significance of the color orange?
The significance of the color orange, it was Phyllis Webstad, I think I had mentioned it earlier. The significance of orange is she wore an orange t-shirt to residential school. And when she went home, she never got it back. Mm-hmm. So that's the significance of orange. So we've all, I guess, have contributed to having that orange shirt. So that's why we have Orange Shirt Day, because of that. Mm-hmm. That's the significance behind it. So we wear orange on that day. One of the things that former chief and my advisor, keeper advisor Ernie Daniels had mentioned that he would like to see yellow. Yellow is a message of hope. We have a scarf at the museum, and he was the one behind that idea. And it was one of the visitors that came from Dauphin, and she made the scarf, handmade, and it's beautiful. It's orange on one side and yellow on the other side, and right throughout the scarf there's yellow and orange, and those little lines represent the journeys of each residential school survivor. So it tells you that they're on different levels of their journey. Not everybody's on the same level of their healing. So when you come to the museum, you'll see the beautiful scarf that was created for us.
I think it's really important to teach legacy of the residential schools. It's a testimony to the world that what has transpired in the residential school. It's very important to educate and teach the public what has happened. This building itself is a reminder of the pain and the hurt that the survivors endured. When it was originally built, it is a residential school. It opened around 1915. It closed in 1975. Now it's a National Historic Site where the museum is located. At one time we were denied our language, our culture, our identity as Indigenous people. It's a difficult story to tell, but at the same time we're working towards reconciliation. We're doing something good for the community. We've been hurting for a long time, and I think it's time to move forward. Now it's a place of healing.
This is one of the last videos that we did with the grant we received, and this always just touches my heart. Every time I see this, it reminds me of when I was and his home community, his language, and the priest just taking him away from everything that he represented. The teepee, that was our home. And I just wanted to end that session here with that, because it just hits me. It just hits me every time I see that. It just I get emotional thinking that we were that small. Can you imagine having your little children, 6, 7 years old, being taken away, and you don't see your family for a whole year? And I have grandkids and great grandkids that are that small, and I can't imagine them being taken out of their home, and the loneliness. It was a terrible time for us. But we overcome, but we still get emotional. Because you never, those memories are embedded in you, but you learn to forgive. And that's one of the things that I didn't talk about and that's one of the survival mechanisms for me is forgiveness, forgiving those that had harmed us, that have destroyed our culture, that just had so much hate for us. We need to forgive those people, otherwise we can't move forward in our journey. And that's one of the things that I learned, and that we all need to forgive to move forward, because we're all humans. We're all one under God. We're all human beings. And we have one Father, and we need to come together. We're all different nations, and we're all given different languages, but we can all come together and work together to make it a better world. So Chimigwach for listening to our stories and listening to the presentation that I made. Chimigwach. Thank you.